Peace and love, family. I'm back with another one. This is the Helping Our People Elevate YouTube channel. As I always say, if you're new to the channel, hit that subscribe button. If you're a returner, thank you. I wouldn't be able to do this without y'all, so I appreciate y'all, as I always say. Uh, Today, we're going to talk about those who fought back. We're going to talk about Gabriel Prosser, Toussaint Louverture, Nat Turner, Denmark Vesey, and Zumbardo Palmares. You know, those who fought back, and a lot of these names we don't know about and they haven't been mentioned, but we're going to talk about, like I said, those who fought back, those who succeeded, and those who were unsuccessful in their rebellions. And so, without holding y'all, as I always say, hit that subscribe button and let's jump straight into it. Peace and love, family.
On behalf of Akuno Senko for Bay, you know what I'm saying? Jay, where you at? We're trying to help our people elevate. Hope. H-O-P-E. We're giving them hope. We doing what we gotta do, you know. Every day, one step at a time, man. We gonna make it happen. Helping our people elevate. Yeah. Sometimes I practice focus, thought, and meditate. I'm trying to come with other ways to help our people elevate and seeking knowledge, make me levitate. The lifted mental state is what results from how we orchestrate. This for the family's sake. Let's self-reflect and self-evaluate. And every day, make sure the steps you take, you calculate. Receive a master's fate. I know I can't exist without the hate, but that's okay. I balance that with higher self today. Success is on this way, and after that, my flesh can pass away.
So we're going to start with, like I said, we're going to talk about some of the black slave rebellions. Slave rebellions were driven by multiple causes, which rooted primarily in the inhumane conditions and brutal exploitation that enslaved people endured. And as I've said in the past video, the word slave deal with Slavic people, but we just using it in its modern sense. So we always say prisoners of war, because our ancestors were not slaves, they were prisoners of war. But staying on the topic, let's go into it. The first reason of the rebellion was the harsh living and working conditions. Enslaved people were subjected to extreme physical and psychological abuse, including beating, deprivation of food, long working hours, and lack of basic human rights. The cruelty of their conditions created deep resentment and a desire for freedom. Second, the desire for freedom and autonomy. The inherent human longing for freedom was a key factor. Enslaved people sought control over their lives, land, families, and culture, which were consistently denied under slavery. Cultural resistance and preservation. Many enslaved people, particularly those who came from Africa, maintained strong ties to their cultural identities and historics of resistance. Their African roots often include stories of fighting against oppression, which inspired rebellions. Injustice of racial and economic oppression. Slavery was a system designed to dehumanize so-called black people and sustain their racial hierarchies for economic gain. Many slave rebellions were fueled by the anger over the racist underpinning of the system and the exploitation of their labor for the benefit of so-called white slave owners. Influence of abolition movements and revolutions. Ideas of liberty and equality were spreading through movements like abolitionism and revolutions such as the American, French, and Haitian revolutions. These movements inspired enslaved people to believe in the possibility of liberation. The religious beliefs. Religion played a role in some slave revolts, with some enslaved individuals interpreting biblical stories or other religious doctrines as justification for their quest for freedom. For example, the story of Moses and the liberation of the Israelites often inspired enslaved people to seek their own exodus. Brutal laws and punishment. Slave codes and legal systems in many religions were designed to control and dehumanize enslaved people further. The oppressive nature of these laws created a tense atmosphere where rebellions became one of the few available ways to resist. These leaders played pivotal roles in fighting against the oppressive system of slavery, often at great personal risk. Some had been enslaved for decades before they revolted, while others fought back shortly after their own enslavement or while still enslaved. So we're going to start with Toussaint Louverture of 1743 to 1803, where he lived in Haiti or Santo Domingo. His rebellion was the Haitian Revolution of 1791 to 1804. How long enslaved? He was born into slavery, freed in his 30s, and joined the Haitian Revolution in 1791 after being free for years. Toussaint Louverture was a key leader in the only successful large-scale slave revolt that led to the establishment of the Haitian as the first Black Republic. Nat Turner, 1800 to 1831, he was from Virginia. The Nat Turner Rebellion of 1831, how long was he enslaved? He was born into slavery. He was around 31 when he led the rebellion. Turner organized a rebellion that resulted in the death of 55 to 65 white people. The rebellion was quickly suppressed, but it deeply shook the institution of slavery in the United States. Gabriel Prosser of 1776 to 1800. He was also from Virginia, and he was part of the Gabriel Rebellion of 1800. How long was he enslaved? He was enslaved for about 24 years before planning his rebellion. Gabriel's rebellion was thwarted by bad weather and betrayal before it could begin, but it raised fear among slaveholders for further revolts. Denmark Vesey of 1767 to 1822. His location was in South Carolina. The Vesey Rebellion of 1822. How long was he enslaved? Vesey was enslaved for about 20 years before purchasing freedom in 1799, and he planned a rebellion for more than 2 decades before being executed. Vesey, a free black man, organized a large rebellion in Charleston, which was stopped before it could begin. Over 130 black people were arrested. Cotto, he was another brother in South Carolina. You had the Stoner Rebellion of 1739. How long was he enslaved? It is unknown how long, but Cotto was enslaved when he led the rebellion. Cotto led a group of enslaved Africans into the Stoner Rebellion, the largest slave uprising in the British mainland colonies, killing 20 to 25 whites. You have Zumbi dos Palmares of 1655 to 1695. His location was in Brazil. You had what was called the Palmares Colombo of 1600s. How long was he enslaved? Zumbi was born in Palmares, a community of escaped enslaved people, but was captured and enslaved as a child for 15 years before escaping. Zumbi became the last leader of the Palmares, a community of escaped enslaved people in Brazil, and fought against Portuguese colonizers. You had John Horse of 1812 to 1882. His location was in Florida. He was part of the Seminole Wars of 1835 to 1842. How long was he enslaved? Well, he was born into slavery, but gained freedom during the Seminole Wars in his 20s. John Horace, a black Seminole leader, fought alongside the Seminoles in Florida against the U.S. forces trying to re-enslave black people, the so-called blacks. Then you had Sambo, the Caribbean rebellion leader. The location was in Guyana. His rebellion was part of the Berbice Slave Rebellion. It is unknown how long he was enslaved, but he was enslaved during the rebellion. Sambo was one of the leaders of the Berbice Revolt, where enslaved people took over plantations and held off the Dutch for more than a year. Samuel Sharp of 1801 to 1832 in the Jamaicas. He was a part of the Baptist Wars of 1831 to 1832. He was another born into slavery. Sharp was about 30 years old when he led the rebellion. Samuel Sharp led the Baptist War, a large uprising that sought to achieve freedom for enslaved peoples in Jamaica. Although the rebellion was crushed, it accelerated emancipation. Kofi, some have heard his name, some haven't, but Kofi was the rebellion leader in Guyana. And so he was part of the Berbice Slave Rebellion in 1763. It is unknown how long Kofi was a slave before leading the revolt, but Kofi led a massive uprising of enslaved people in the Dutch colonies of Berbice, attempting to establish free African states before the rebellion was crushed. So here was a breakdown of which of the rebellion leaders were successful and who died during or after their revolts. So Toussaint Louverture, yes, partially, while Toussaint played a key role in the success of the Haitian Revolution, which led to the establishment of the first Black Republic in Haiti, he was captured by the French in 1802 and died in prison in 1803 before the revolution's final victory. And so he died in prison in 1803. But you see the brother has a Moorish fez on. Then you have Zumbi dos Palmares. He was partially successful, but the Palmares Palombo, community of escaped slaves, resisted Portuguese forces for nearly a century. Zumbi was one of its last leaders and defended it fiercely, though Palmares was eventually destroyed. And so, yes, he died in battle in 1695 while defending Palmares. John Horace. Yes, he was successful in helping Black Seminoles secure their freedom. After leading successful resistance during the Seminole Wars, he and others escaped to Mexico, where they were able to live free. And so he lived until 1882. Nat Turner was unsuccessful in his rebellion. Although Nat Turner's rebellion shocked the United States and killed around 55 to 65 white people, it was particularly suppressed and Nat Turner was captured. So yes, he was executed in 1831 after being captured. And if you saw the movie Birth of a Nation, then you saw how he was executed and you saw how he was captured. You saw who told on him and how it went. Gabriel Prosser, another unsuccessful rebellion. His planned rebellion was stalled by betrayal and bad weather. He was arrested before the rebellion could even take place. He was executed in 1800. Another unsuccessful rebellion was Denmark Vesey. Vesey's planned rebellion was discovered before it could begin. He and his co-conspirators were arrested, and so he was executed in 1822. The Cato or the Stono Rebellion. The Cato Rebellion resulted in the death of several whites, but was eventually crushed. Many of these rebels were killed or captured. Uncertain, but most of the leaders of the rebellion, likely including Cato, were killed during or after the suppression. Another unsuccessful was Sambo. No, although the Berbish Rebellion lasted for over a year, the Dutch eventually suppressed it, and it's uncertain how he died, but many of the leaders of the Berbish Rebellion were executed. Samuel Sharp. Samuel Sharp was another unsuccessful in his rebellion, but the Baptist War did accelerate to the end of slavery in Jamaica and the British Empire. The uprising was a success, but its impact hastened emancipation, and he was executed in 1832. The British Rebellion, which Kofi led, was unsuccessful in establishing a free African state, as it was eventually crushed by Dutch forces. Kofi died during the rebellion, likely by suicide to avoid capture. And so again, the successful rebellions were Toussaint Louverture, Zumbas da Palmares, and John Horse, partially. Unsuccessful rebellions, Nat Turner, Gabriel Prosser, Denmark Vesey, Cato, Sambo, Samuel Sharp, and Kofi. The leaders who survived were John Horace. He survived and lived until 1882. Most of the leaders who organized and led revolts were eventually captured and executed, but their rebellions had lasting impacts on institutions of slavery and the struggle for freedom. The lasting effect of these slave rebellions, though many were suppressed, had profound impacts on slavery, colonial powers, and the eventual fight for freedom across the Americas and the Caribbean. Here are some key effects. Haitian Revolution and global emancipation movements. The Haitian Revolution, led by figures like Toussaint Louverture, was the most successful slave rebellion in history, resulting in the abolition of slavery in Haiti and the establishment of the first so-called Black Republic in 1804. This victory inspired enslaved people and abolitionists around the world. It also terrified slaveholding societies, particularly in the United States and the Caribbean, who feared similar uprisings. Haiti's success led to increased pressure on colonial powers to reconsider the institution of slavery and contributed to the growing abolitionist movements worldwide. The lasting effect of these slave rebellions, though many were suppressed, had profound impact on slavery, colonial power, and the eventual fight for freedom across the Americas and Caribbean. Here are some key effects. Increased repression in the United States South. Rebellions like those led by Nat Turner, Gabriel Prosser, and Denmark Vesey sparked intense fear among white slaveholders in the United States South. In response, states passed more oppressive laws, restricting the movement of enslaved people, banning literacy, and increasing patrol to prevent uprisings. However, these rebellions also fueled abolitionist movements in the North as they highlighted the brutality and unsustainability of slavery. And if you want to pause the screen and look at it over here on the right, this is one of the laws that they had made. Slaves, free Negroes, and mulattoes. It was just some laws that they were putting into play. Accelerated emancipation in the British Empire. The British War in Jamaica, led by Samuel Sharp, was a significant event that helped push the British Empire towards ending slavery. Though the revolt was crushed, the widespread destruction and unrest it caused convinced British lawmakers that slavery was untenable. This led to the Slavery Abolitionist Act of 1833, which ended slavery across the British Empire. Cultural and political influence in Brazil and Latin America. Figures like Zumbi dos Palmares became enduring symbols of resistance in Brazil. While Palmares eventually fell, Zumbi and the community's long-standing resistance influenced later movements to abolish slavery in Brazil, which was the last country in the Americas to do it in 1888. Similarly, Kofi and Sambo's role in the Berbish Rebellion are remembered as part of the broader resistance to Dutch colonial rule, with uprisings like they're contributing to growing anti-slavery and anti-colonial sentiments. Black Seminole freedom and migration. The resistance led by John Horse and other Black Seminoles was significant in securing freedom for many Black Seminoles as they successfully fought against the U.S. forces and eventually relocated to Mexico. This marked one of the few cases where Black rebels negotiated freedom through warfare and migration. And so we're going to end it with psychological impact on slaveholders and the government. Across all rebellions, the constant threat of uprising destabilized colonial and slaveholding societies. The fear of rebellion led to stricter control and harsher laws, but also revealed the inherent instability of the slave system. The constant resistance, even when not immediately successful, chipped away at the foundation of slavery. Summary of lasting effects. The Haitian Revolution inspired global abolitionist movements and led to the first so-called Black Republic. U.S. rebellions increased repressions but galvanized northern abolitionists and highlighted slavery's brutality. Brazil and Latin America created symbols of resistance that influenced anti-slavery and anti-colonial movements. Seminole Wars, one of the rare cases where rebels successfully secured freedom through migration and resistance. In short, these rebellions left legacies of resistance, inspiring future abolitionist efforts, accelerating emancipation, and showing that enslaved people would continue to fight for their freedom against oppressive systems. Now, imagine what would happen if all the people stood up today and fought against this system. You don't think we would see change? If you made it this far, I appreciate you checking the content out. Stay tuned for part 2. We're going to go into part 2 of those who fought back. We're going to go into the 1900s and a little deeper And so I'll catch you on the next one, family. Peace and love.